Kia ora koutou katoa. So, day 4 of the book review challenge. I'm on the beach today, so I thought I'd give you a nicer view than my OD mug. And today, I'm not reviewing one book, I'm reviewing a series. And this is a fiction series by Stephen Leather, the Jack Nightingale series. Now, Stephen Leather, I understand, is more popular for his other series. I'm not even sure what it is. I think that's kind of special forces stuff, I think. But the Jack Nightingale series is kind of a cult mystery. So Jack Nightingale is a private detective, and he frequently comes up against the occult. So he's not like a kind of an occult private detective per se, but he has various adventures and kind of meets various people that kind of lead to plenty of opportunities for future stories. So it's a series of novels. They've all got the word night in them in one way or another, and then he kind of went on to short stories, and I think he's just doing the odd short story online as an ebook. So yeah, so he claims that his inspiration for this is Constantine, or Constantine, I'm not really sure which way that's supposed to be pronounced, and Dennis Wheatley, and that's very noticeable from the material, really. If you're familiar with either of those, you will see them in the work. He's not racist like Dennis Wheatley. Dennis Wheatley was everythingist, really. Quite a dodgy character in many ways, as old Dennis. Although he did write some brilliant books. People forget that Dennis Wheatley was a major bestseller, very, very popular in his day. I love the stories. The reason I like the stories, I like occult stuff, and I kind of quite like occult realism. So by occult realism or supernatural realism, I like stuff that's kind of based on, not necessarily stuff that that could be real, because who knows really with occult stuff, but stuff that's based on real occult practices, or at least to some degree. Now, funny enough, there's a YouTube channel that I follow, and they had an author on there who was also an occultist, and he was doing an interview on the very subject of occult realism in fiction. And he said that actually occult realism is incredibly boring and kills stories. So I thought that was kind of quite interesting. So he quite likes occult unrealism. I like occult realism. I like stories that you think, maybe that could happen, or stories that are at least based in some kind of established theory or belief about the occult or the paranormal. And this is kind of like that. I mean, yes, there's lots of kind of liberties, but from a ritual point of view, you could kind of believe it, really. You could not necessarily, what happens when these rituals occur, but the fact that this is something not too far removed from what real occult rituals would be like. But the other thing about the Jack Nightingale series that I like is, and this sounds like a criticism, really, but I think this is something that I don't know, I just find very enjoyable and comforting, is there's a lot of repetition. So the stories are very original and unique, and are very well crafted. Really good twist after twist after twist, and very cleverly constructed stories. But the character parts, there's a lot of repetition. So Jack Nightingale as a lead character, he's very much a man of habits, really. He drinks the same drink and has the same breakfast and says the same things kind of endlessly, which I think probably to a lot of readers that would be quite, potentially quite annoying. I think, as somebody that's on the autistic spectrum, has a kind of opposite effect on me. It has a kind of comforting, reassuring effect. And it's interesting. So I'm on the autistic spectrum. I think I'm going to probably use the word Aspie in the title, just to kind of qualify that a little bit. So Aspie is an affectionate term. It's used by people that have what would have been called Asperger's syndrome. Okay, so presumably Asperger's syndrome was, well, no presumably about it. Asperger's syndrome was discovered by somebody called Asperger, and it was a name that was used for people who were autistic but were above average IQ, essentially. Now, in the diagnostic manuals, the most recent ones, they don't call it Asperger's, they call it high-functioning autism. But the term Aspie has kind of stuck, really. So if somebody talks about somebody being Aspie, what they mean is that they're on the autistic spectrum and have at least average IQ. Okay. And that does happen to kind of encompass and include most kind of geeks and nerds. Most geeks and nerds will probably be on the autistic spectrum and come into that category. Although being a geek or a nerd is not one of the diagnostic criteria. Anyway, I think it should be actually. So I maintain that I can recognise somebody on the autistic spectrum quite easily. And I think the actual diagnostic and even the screening mechanisms for this are terrible. Most people would be excluded from this. Which I think is a great shame, because the whole thing of call it high-functioning autism, Asperger's, whatever you want to call it, it's not a disability, it's a difference, it's a neurological difference, and people who have this will probably struggle enormously with lots of things, but they will also have one or two superpowers. And I think if this kind of thing could be recognised, if you just recognise people with this as being different right from an early age, not in a stigmatising way, but in a way where you can steer people in a helpful way, help them find what they're good at, help them find their forte, then it'll make their lives better and everybody's life better, really. Now, there are also other forms of high-functioning autism. So I recognise myself on the spectrum, and I do refer to myself as an Aspie for kind of shorthand purposes. I'm actually, strictly speaking, I'm not Asperger's. I'm pathological demand avoidance syndrome, which is a slightly different presentation, and that's quite a controversial diagnosis. So I sometimes use the term Aspie's autistic spectrum condition, ASC. Now, the diagnostic manuals call it autistic spectrum disorder, and I object to the D, and I prefer the C, condition, rather than disorder. So I say ASC rather than ASD, and I use the term Aspie's, and I developed a little questionnaire that I use myself, which doesn't have a diagnostic value. It's not properly research based or anything like that, but it's a useful therapeutic tool for discussing and bringing up possible areas where somebody might have indications of autism. Often somebody that's already been diagnosed or already suspects that, and I call that the ASCII one. So that's ASCII. So I sometimes call myself a Paddy. I don't think I've got any Irish blood in me, but there is an Irish branch to my family, but I think they kind of came further down the line. So I'm strictly speaking, I'm a Paddy and an Aspie rather than an Aspie, but I answer to Aspie just for convenience, really. So I'm talking as an insider and a clinician. I'm not a specialist. I'm not specially trained in autism, but I've worked with an awful lot of people who are autistic, helping them with other issues. So I have a good knowledge of the conditions that go together, as you'll know from some of my other videos. So if you're interested in this stuff, check out first of all the series on neurodiversity. So I don't know whether Stephen Leather is autistic. I wouldn't be surprised. There's something about that repetitiveness, and autistic people often are repetitive. One of the things that sometimes used as a screening criteria is that people that are autistic will often repeat things verbatim rather than speaking spontaneously. They'll kind of be quite well rehearsed sometimes in what they say, and people will, one of the things is that people sometimes experience people with autism as talking at them rather than to them. But also things like stimming. So stimming is something that happens with people on the autistic spectrum, high functioning and low functioning, and often it's a kind of it's a particular movement which is repeated. But often it can also be vocal as well. So I actually didn't realise this at all, but I do vocal stims, particularly when I'm stressed, or particularly when I'm fatigued and find it hard to motivate myself. So I'll repeat certain phrases that are kind of fairly meaningless, really, but I will repeat them. So there's something about repetition that I think goes with the autistic presentation, or a love of repetition, or some reassurance around repetition. It's like jokes. I will repeat the same jokes endlessly. I don't mean jokes as in, three men walk into a bar type jokes, but a pun that's associated with a particular place. Every time I go to that place, I will kind of feel almost compelled to make that pun. Or if somebody says something and there's a jokey answer to it, it's like a compulsion. And it's really silly stuff. It's not, it's not even funny, but I derive great satisfaction from it. So, for example, if somebody comes back from the shops and says, I bought this item, it was reduced, I have this massive compulsion to say, how big was it before? Which, it's not that funny, really. It's not that funny the first time, but, the 500th time. So partners of Aspies and Askies and Paddies have to be very patient and indulging. They have to love us, really. But there is something, for me, I think, about repetition. And that's in these books. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like them so much. There's something kind of so reassuring and familiar about some of these same phrases being used, the same behaviours by the characters. But the stories are really fresh and original. I mean, they are of a certain style. They tend to involve the same characters and a mixture of new characters. But if you have an Aspergic or high-functioning autism or pathological demand avoidance disposition, I'm not sure if it is a disposition, maybe it's just a position, you might enjoy these books. And if you like, and I suppose really that's the thing about ritual as well, isn't it? The whole thing about occult and ritual, that's all about repetition. And ritual, rituals is another part of autism, having to, like the thing about, like lining things up or having things in order or doing things in a certain way, a certain sequence, they're all rituals, really. So I think there's something very, very autistic about these books, but in a good way. So I'll be interested to hear from other Aspies and Askies whether you found these books enjoyable, whether you feel the same way. I'd be interested to hear from neurotypical people as well. Interested to hear from anyone, really. Interested to hear from anyone that kind of gave up on the books because of the repetitive factors in there. I love them. I wish, it's a shame he stopped writing the novels. He's just gone on to the short stories. Stephen Leather, Jack Nightingale series. Just a side note, really. The other thing is he very bravely, I think, uses in there uses a reference as baddies. He uses a real occult order. So there is an occult order called the Order of the Nine Angles, and they're quite kind of nasty. They've got some right-wing overtones. They've got some agendas about kind of overturning society, and they have this kind of, if you can use the words, personal development kind of plan that comes with membership, where you're encouraged to do things that are really out of character to kind of broaden your potential and your capabilities. So, and they do kind of, there is some talk, whether this is apocryphal or real, that they encourage you to kill people. They think, it's quite good for breaking down some of your personal inhibitions to murder somebody. So that's kind of, that's on their kind of curriculum as well. So they're a real organisation. Nobody knows quite how established they are, because it's clandestine. I suspect, he paints them as a very well-funded, kind of organisation that's all the members are kind of, very, millionaires and judges and police chiefs and people of quite a high standing in the community. One of these kind of Illuminati type organisations that can, pull all the strings. Whereas I think the Order of Nine Angles is probably a lot more informal. And as I said in other videos, my experience is, and I've not got anything against, I don't care when I say this, the real Satanist, okay, the kind of person that you might bump into who is a Satanist is actually nothing like that. Satanism is not what you think it is, okay? And the kind of people that are likely to be Satanists are also probably Aspies as well, because nearly all subcultures are kind of manned. All the great subcultures and hobby groups of the world are places that are absolutely full of Aspies. Aspies love subcultures, love hobbies, love this kind of thing. So often, actually Satanists are people who are struggling in the world. It's got a lot of philosophy associated to it, which appeals to the underdog and the person that's down at heel. Not really things that appeal to somebody that's kind of wealthy and very successful in life. So it's interesting to do a whole. We've touched on this in some other videos, some reviews of TV series and stuff like that. That actually real life Satanists and fictional Satanists are just so different. They're different in belief, they're different in practice, and they're different in social class. Unless, of course, you kind of believe in these. I won't use the C word, but the kind of the stuff where there's a satanic elite running the world, which I think there is a financial and business elite pulling all the shots and running all the world. I don't think for 1 minute that they are even slightly satanic. But there we go. So that's another angle on Jack Nightingale, really. So I don't know whether it'd be interesting to know whether he's had any feedback from members of the Order of Nine Angles about his use of that. So it's quite brave, really, I think, to use a real and quite sinister organisation as your baddies. But yeah, he does that. So yeah, check it out and let me know what you think, and hope you've enjoyed the view of the beach. If nothing else, our first weekend of being able to get out to the beach and just lollop about on the beach for a few hours. So it's been really nice. It's really hot. It's winter now here, but it's like a summer's day. I'm going to have to slap a bit more sun lotion on, I think. It's not like boiling hot, but the sun is really strong. So I will be back tomorrow with something else for you. Be completely different. Rangimarie.